Welcome to the official podcast of Eternia.com. We have the power. I'm your host, AJ, aka Voodoo Magic, aka Zor. And sitting hundreds of miles away from me is my right-hand man-at-arms, Colt, aka Red Pyramid, aka Dad-at-Arms. How you doing today, Colt?
I'm doing good, AJ.
Great. So today's episode is titled Poisoned Ivy, a play on Batman lore, of course, but Ivy, because ivy leaves seem to be growing out of Moss Man's body, who he and Evil-Lyn we plan to give our Masterverse action figure thoughts on today, and poisoned for our in-depth analysis today of Masters of the Universe Revelation Episode 2, titled Poisoned Chalice. I always want to say The Poisoned Chalice, but the title is actually Poisoned Chalice. And I actually think I'll be mentioning Batman 2 in the podcast, so it's going to tie together very nicely.
Nice.
But Colt, I wanted to start out today, before anything else, with mentioning to you that I broke down and bought a new Eternia Skeletor. If you remember, my original plan was just to buy Revelation Masterverse figures.
That's right.
And I was going to stay away from the other lines, including New Eternia, no matter how hard I was tempted. But after our last podcast, where we went over Masterverse Wave 1, He-Man and Skeletor, and my disappointment grew with how unhappy I guess I was, or not completely happy with Skeletor, nor did I want to display him, combined with how great the classic Skeletor head looks on this figure. I went ahead and bought this, and I'm going to be displaying it with my Revelation figures as my Skeletor Revelation figure. Yeah, I'm not interested in the Viking guy with the bone beard,
with the helmet, and
yeah,
I kind of dig the beard.
It is cool, but I just can't reconcile it with my Revelation figures over there.
So what? Yeah, so how I do it, how I have it displayed, is I use the alternate head from New Eternia, and I just popped it on my Revelation figure. And then, it looks pretty decent. I'd grab it, but it's behind me on the shelf, and I don't want to knock things around as I'm standing up. But then I have the New Eternia, the Barbarian Skeletor, displayed as he is in the box.
Let's see, maybe people can see the head. Yeah.
But that is a fantastic head sculpt.
Yeah. Yeah, so I broke down, and this is how it starts, isn't it, Colt? Right? I have one New Eternia figure, and next thing you know, that new Eternia Beastman is coming out.
That's the next one I'm excited for. Thankfully, I wasn't too thrilled about the latest wave, the one with She-Ra and Hordak and Zodak. Not too excited about any of those.
Me neither.
Can rest easy.
Except I'm really digging the Catra figure. I've never been a big fan of the character itself.
Yeah,
but I just like how it looks. I like how you could lower the
visor,
the
mask, or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I'll have to do my best to try my best to stay away from plunging some more money on that one. But I'm weak. What can I say?
Yeah, we all are.
So if you remember on our last podcast, we suggested about possibly reading some comments that were posted on the current podcast, which was podcast episode 2. And some people did post some comments. So I want to honor our word and read a few. So the first comment we got was from Maria. And we know Maria. Okay.
Yeah, we know Maria.
And she said
she's a good friend.
Yeah, she's really sweet, and she participated in the group She hasn't been here in a little while, but yeah, no, she's really sweet. So she said, I love the Masterverse line packaging. I've kept all my boxes neatly folded. So she folds them up, but just hangs on to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably a testament to the artwork of Eamon O'Donoghue.
Yep.
She says, I've kept all my boxes neatly folded, and now my unpopular opinion. This line's proportions are my favorite so far, and I love Smiley He-Man. I had never collected Motu before. Oh, listen to that. I never collected Motu before, but this line made me jump right in. So and that makes me happy for two reasons, right? I mean, first that we're the Masters of the Universe Revelation is making new collectors.
Yeah.
It's not just for the old fans or the old
Now,
collectors.
yeah, I wanted to clarify that because I know that she is a fan of the original Filmation cartoon,
Yeah.
and she grew up on that. But yeah, like she said, these are the first toys she's ever collected.
Yeah, I almost said new fan, and I went right to collectors. It's not just for Masterverse is not just for the old collectors, to rekindle that, but to start the flame with new ones, and that always makes me excited.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know what? Actually, I have something. I also love that she loves Smiley He-Man. Let me see if I can put up a smile. There we go. Look at that.
It's a good smile.
For anyone watching YouTube, I put on a smiling He-Man from Masters of the Universe Revelation, and that's a great smile.
It is, and I like how so in the art book that came out, I like how when they're talking about He-Man, how they say that as soon as they keyed in on his smile, they knew they'd found the look that they wanted for He-Man.
Yeah,
and I think that's a testament to the character. I mean, he's a hero. He's easily comparable to Superman, and Superman is a type of hero that is one who engenders hope in people, right?
Right.
And I think that's important to He-Man's character, is that he's happy, he makes other people happy, and he knows how to boost those around him.
Yeah.
So I like that she keys in on that.
Definitely. Okay, so our next comment is from Eugenius Moore Flam or Flam. Sorry, guys, if I'm butchering these names. Eugenius says, "Yay, I love you guys, and thank you for doing the podcast. Really enjoyed the channel. I actually did. I actually did the 10-second to a better figure on Evil-Lyn, which was insane that I didn't think of it myself, but it looks great. Thank you. Don't know if I'm going to paint Skeletor's eyes, but I might give it a try this summer. But thank you for you guys doing the channel and the content." So, what Eugenius, and again, I apologize if I'm butchering this name, is saying, or is referring to, is there's a couple 10 seconds to a better figure videos featuring quick ways to improve Evil-Lyn and Skelegod. And if you haven't watched that, be sure to check it out if you're just familiar with our podcast. But I love that Eugenius, loves what we're doing here and loves the content. So
yeah, very cool.
Definitely. All right, Colt, are you ready to continue our retroactive look at the Masterverse Revelation figures?
Yeah.
All right. So why don't we start with Moss Man? Actually, I have a graphic set up like last time for our YouTube viewers.
Cool.
So, what we're posting on YouTube is just a picture of Moss Man and some of the scenes in Masters of the Universe Revelation. and a picture of the Masterverse, Masters of the Universe Revelation Moss Man figure. So, general thoughts, Colt. Do you want to go first regarding how you feel about Moss Man?
Yeah. So this was one that I probably spent. I didn't immediately buy this one. It was quite a while after the show had aired, and even after part 2 had aired before I finally picked this figure up.
Really?
Yeah. Moss Man has never really been one of my favorite characters. And it was, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where you're trying to decide when a new toy line comes out with how much money you want to sink into it, right? It's like, do I need every character? Do I need the main characters? And so that's kind of what held me off on Moss Man. I was like, well, he's not a favorite character. I don't necessarily need him, so he's a pass for me. But then I eventually just kept seeing him on the shelf and just kept looking at him in the box and stuff, and before I finally pulled the trigger on it. And I will say that I think he has the most unique design, especially out of Wave 1. Maybe out of all the Revelation figures that have been released so far. His loincloth is different. His buck is different. It's not just the standard human buck with different paint apps. Like, he's got, plant molded onto him and stuff. And he's got unique feet. Those tree trunk feet are different. The clawed hands that look like trunks, that look like branches and stuff, are different than any of the other figures. He's a good looking figure. I think the only thing I don't like about him is with his vine arm. It really makes him want to tip over. It's hard to stand him up with this thing attached. And so I don't, he's not necessarily my favorite figure in this line, kind of because of that. But overall, I don't hate him.
So, I was excited about Moss Man, and I bought him with Wave 1. You bring up an interesting point. And it's going to be good because I'm going to have to remember this. That my first question will be, Colt, do you own this figure? Because unlike myself, and every way you collect it, whatever works for you is the right way to do it. But unlike myself, who's collecting every Revelation figure, there are some you're basically picking and choosing through the line of the ones you like and the ones you want to collect, and not necessarily buying everyone just because it says Revelation on the box. So I'll have to remember that that's my first should be my first question with any of these figures. But secondly, you brought up an interesting point. It is interesting that Moss Man came out in Wave 1, that it's typically not a top tier Wave 1 figure.
Yeah.
When it comes to Masters of the Universe, you're usually getting Moss Man very deep in the line. Because it's not really sought out. It's not one of the big names. Actually, I don't collect Origins, but I don't even think Moss Man has come out for Origins yet.
Yeah. There's no Moss Man for Origins,
and I don't think there even has been one announced yet either.
Nope.
Right? No. Okay.
Nope.
So it is interesting that you held back, and maybe a lot of people did, because there's just not a lot of love for Moss Man that there is for the traditional ones, right? Merman,
right.
Skeletor, He-Man, Beastman, Evil-Lyn, Tila, Sorceress, Man at Arms, the big names, the heavy hitters. So yeah, come to think of it, it was an interesting choice. Because with season 1, you certainly had a big litter still to pick from. So I picked up Moss Man with Wave 1. I enjoyed the window, box packaging, just the same, with the blue hieroglyphics, and I love O'Donoghue's art on the side there. I love the white eyeballs. You see that?
I do like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. And you know what? I think, let me bring that picture back up before I continue regarding his eyeballs. Yeah, there's no pupils here, but
No. Yeah,
I do believe when Skeletor is slammed by Moss Man in episode 1 before he's burned to death, I believe he had pupils then. I wonder if
I don't
that's
remember that.
Yeah, I wonder if that had something to do with going to Preternia.
Maybe because these are Preternian shots. That's true.
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure.
don't remember if he does have pupils. I'll have to go back and watch.
All right, let's see if I can search this really quick. I wasn't prepared for this. Let's see.
One thing that I will say that I'm, while you're searching, one thing that I am kind of actually pretty disappointed in is that there's no flocking on this figure like the traditional figure had.
Oh no, you're upset with that?
Not upset, but it would have been cool. I understand why they didn't. I get the look they're going for. But I've seen there's been a few people who have done customs where they add flocked features and it looks really cool. But then, it's a $20 figure.
All right, Colt, I think I got this to work. So for anyone watching YouTube, I found an image. I can't expand it any further. But it does have a shot of Moss Man clearly pinning Skeletor to, what was it? Oh, to the orb triangle, the orb hole.
Yeah, the
right?
pyramid.
The pyramid. And
obelisk or whatever it is.
He definitely has 2 little pupils there, it looks.
Are those, it's hard to tell, are those pupils or are they his bushy plant eyebrows kind of hanging over his eyeballs? I can't tell. It kind of looks like both from the more I look at it. I keep going back and forth on it.
Yeah, and maybe it was done that way on purpose. Maybe it is part of his leafy eyebrows. And
that's kind of what I'm thinking, because it seems odd that he wouldn't have them when we see him later. Because he is in Preternia, but even with Adam, like Adam still looks the same as he did.
Yeah.
While he's in Preternia.
So, Colt, you were talking about flocked. I know the previous Moss Mans were flocked, and I guess that's one of the things that you long for on your Moss Man, to have that little furry coating.
Sure.
I don't miss it. I actually prefer it unflocked because, to be honest with you, there would be so many details that we would just miss. I mean, this is not just a standard green figure, but you see all these like branches and vines and leaves that look like ivy leaves. This is what we were referring to our title, roots. His belt looks wooden, maybe.
Yeah.
And
it's got that grassy looking loincloth.
Yeah, he's just a culmination of different plants. And I think we'd miss all this great detail if he was flocked. I mean, sure, he'd be nice and fuzzy, but I don't know. I actually prefer it this way. Back on, I want to say one thing with the artwork with Eamon O'Donoghue is it's kind of cool because in this artwork, in the background, you can see Skeletor and Beastman like in the swamp.
Kind of creeping around back there.
Kind of creeping around back there. And I wonder what they're doing, but it's pretty cool. But I don't know. I really like this character, and looking at this character, the vintage legacy figure was an entire reuse of the Beastman figure, right?
Yeah.
The only differences was the paint, the flocking, and
the smell.
Yes. Yeah, and the pine smell. And do you know what? I've heard that criticism too. The flocking I could almost get, but I did read some comments that's like, if it doesn't smell, I'm not buying it. And I'm like, do I really want a figure that's gonna make my whole room smell like a pine smelling car air freshener? Right?
No, because
No.
I remember the classics figures. He smelled like pine, and then also the Stinkor figure had that patchouli smell to it, right?
Oh yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
them being on my shelf and just that smell intermingled, and it wasn't a pleasant smell.
Yeah.
And so I'm perfectly okay with this figure and Stinkor, who comes later, not having a scent.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in total agreement with you. I do want to say though that even this is not a reuse of Beastman, which I'm happy about. It
Yeah,
does
he
look like that they're still incorporating Beastman's face in a way,
it kind of
right?
looks more like the classic Beastman face in his design.
Yeah, he's still got the beard and
But it's still it reminds me more of the vintage face than it does the Revelation face
yeah.
of Beastman. And
But what's
obviously he's a much leaner character, and whereas Beastman is a brute, hulking,
yeah.
brutish character. So it's
But
cool. I like the differentiation between the two.
yeah, it's nice that it still harkens back to it, even though it's not
Mhm.
a reuse of Beastman. And be honest with you, I wouldn't want it to be, not in
Yeah,
Masterverse.
I agree.
So I think it's a wild design, and I'm fine with it not having a club. Um, it has 6 pairs of hands, which is crazy. Um, there are some more like angry hands, then relaxed hands, and then grabbing hands. Except I don't think he comes with anything he can grab. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
unless
The only
you
accessory he has is that vine attachment that counts
yeah.
as a hand.
Now the vine attachment is cool. I did plug one in, but you're right. It's going to weigh the figure down, and I guess if you put a Skeletor on the ground, right, or pin the
Inside it,
Skeletor
having
to
pinned down with it, yeah.
yeah, or pin him to something with it, I think that would work. But I don't know.
I think with this, like with the vine, the only thing I can get it to do is lean forward to keep him from tipping over, you know?
Yeah,
I kind of wish that the joints were a little bit stiffer so that you could get him with his arm stretched out and those vines extending straight outward horizontally. I think that would be a cool look for it. But as it is, he just kind of falls over.
or if the vines were lighter, right?
Yeah,
So
not so dense.
maybe hollow plastic or something like that, versus
Yeah.
what it shows.
Ooh, maybe some wire articulation or something.
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. But you know what? I really do love the look of this figure, and for some reason, to me, I think the craftsmanship of it, the design, the sculpting, I mean, it deserves to be up there. I can't criticize anyone if they say this is the best figure in the line. I really can't. It's very well done. I think it just comes down to, does it appeal to you? You
Yeah.
know, it's a cross between maybe it's not your typical Moss Man, right? It's a cross between a Sasquatch and Moss
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's a good call. It kind of looks like a Sasquatch,
Yeah.
which is cool. You can get him in that classic Sasquatch pose from the famous video where he's walking, swinging his arms.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, unless you got anything more to say, it comes down to, first, what is your favorite Moss Man? Do you have a favorite Moss Man?
I think my favorite, I guess, animation style. I like the Revelation Moss Man because he's not in the show very much, but when he is there, he's the mentor type character. He's wise, he's ancient, and he just kind of evokes that cool factor. And he's voiced by Alan Oppenheimer, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. As far as toys go, I think I do like the classics figure the best.
Oh no!
Because I think he looks good, and I like his little accessories. Like I like the little knife that he has. The little satchel that's made out of vines is really cool that slings across his shoulder.
Moss Man is unhappy.
But beyond that, I am glad I picked up the Masterverse figure, and I like him the more I look at him on my shelf, and I'm glad he's there. So I don't have any complaints, real complaints against him. I have, dream wants, like, yeah, some flocking would be nice, but I agree with you. I think we'd lose some of that detail. So I don't really have an actual argument against why Moss Man isn't a good figure.
So for me, I say anyone who doesn't pick Masters of the Universe, Masterverse Revelation Moss Man as their favorite Moss Man is flocking crazy. You see what I did there?
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah, be honest with you, I would say the vintage is my number 2. But the Masterverse Moss Man claimed my top spot. I'm just not a fan of the 2000X or the classics version. So this is my Moss Man to beat. And
now I think the 2000X was a Toy Fair exclusive, wasn't it? And it was just a repaint of the Beastman figure,
which was
in the
traditional.
show. Yeah, and in the show he looked completely different. In the show he actually has a pretty cool design.
Yeah,
but he doesn't. Yeah. He looks nothing like the figure that they eventually came out with, because that figure, it was just the traditional repaint.
I think some fans of 2000X have even suggested that the Masterverse Moss Man did a better job capturing the 2000X Moss Man than it did the actual 2000X figure. So,
yeah,
like you said, so I think this one is a hidden gem, and it doesn't get enough praise even from myself. So decision time. Colt, thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down for Moss Man?
Oh, it's an easy thumbs up for Moss Man.
Yeah, me too. I would definitely recommend it for any collector. So, my friend, are you ready to move to Evil-Lyn?
Yes.
Let's start with our first established question. Does Colt own Evil-Lyn? Yes.
I have Evil-Lyn.
Okay. It doesn't make him Pisto like Fisto.
Nope. I think I'm going to get ahead of it right now, and I will say that I think Evil-Lyn is the best figure of Wave 1, for sure.
Wow. Okay. I was actually going to ask that when we're done with Wave 1, so spoiler alert.
But, spoiler. I mean, we can edit it out, and I'll say it again.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I don't think anyone's going to be, rioting because of it. So I guess I'll start this one. Again, I love the window box packaging. I love that you can open it and take the figure out and display it and then put it back in, good as new. I love the artwork of Eamon O'Donoghue. On the back, the artwork looks like she's I don't know, dealing with planets, and seems almost like I think this came out before the show came out, the series.
I think it did, and I remember. I think I saw it on Facebook or somewhere where Eamon was talking about how when he was given, the task of doing this artwork, that he didn't necessarily know how the show would play out or anything like that, and he was just kind of giving general ideas on how to paint them. I could be wrong on that. But I seem to remember him mentioning that.
Well, considering her look into the universe in part 2, this cover art is definitely apropos, even if accidental. So,
yeah, but for sure,
Eamon really does a great job here. And I apologize to Eamon. Sometimes I say Eamon. I actually know someone named Eamon, and I'm going to always mess this up. But regarding Evil-Lyn here, I am happy with her skin tone. No, I'm not a fan of that yellow skin.
The jaundiced look.
Yes.
I agree. I've never liked the yellow skin.
Yeah, especially in the vintage. Oof, that was just too
Yeah.
much for me. I believe that yeah, her skin tone pretty much matches the Filmation series. She's a little shorter than that 7-inch size. You know, I have one over there, and yeah, she stands a little shorter, maybe about 6.5 inches if I had to guess. You know, I did I did a 10 seconds away to a better figure where I showed how Evil-Lyn, if you pull her head up a little higher on her neck, that she can look so much better. But I also think that's kind of unfair to the figure, because if you look at, and I should post her picture up here on our YouTube broadcast, if you look at where her shoulders are compared to her chin, she actually has a neck there with her head all the way down. It's just that furry collar straight on. Looks like
Seems to cover it up.
yeah, it gives the appearance that her shoulders are bigger
Yeah.
than they are, and that she's no neck. But looking at the figure in the box and judging by the where the shoulders rest versus the furry collar, she's fine. So, but I think it just creates some sort of optical illusion that she has no
Yeah.
neck, you know.
Yeah.
I think the facial sculpt is fantastic.
She's very pretty. It's a very pretty face sculpt.
You know, I think Masterverse, this is going to be controversial, but I think Masterverse is kicking classics butts with female faces, to be honest with
I agree.
you.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think, this will be something we talk about more when we get into Tila, the version 1 Tila figure. She has a very nice face sculpt that
Yeah.
I've come to appreciate more and more. And it's the same with Evil-Lyn. Like, I agree with you. I think they have better face sculpts than their classics counterparts.
Yeah, both heads, even her head with her longer hair, which was really surprised. And I guess we'll talk about it more in the episode, but she's got this great white flowing hair, and it's awesome that a basic, are these called basic figures in the wave?
Yeah, these aren't deluxe.
Yeah, it came with a second head. Actually, other than classic Tila 2.0, is there any other basic figures that came with an extra head that you can think of?
Not in the Revelation subline. I mean,
No,
we
it was
definitely
all
get into the alternate heads with the new Eternia figures, but yeah, only version 2 Tila and Evil-Lyn have alternate heads packed in.
In the basic version.
In the basic, yeah, we do have Gray Skull, but he's deluxe.
Yeah, we have deluxe, we have Faker, right? Yeah,
Faker. Well, yeah, Faker was a deluxe. That's true.
Yeah. But for basic,
I think you're right.
For basic, what a deal, because you get a second head, you get a wand, and then you get the longer staff. Is this a wand or is this called a scepter? I don't know my magical definitions. And you have 6 hands in total. And I love the spellcasting hands,
Yeah, they're very cool.
And she's so posable.
Yeah, and I like her outfit. I like that she can hold her, I don't know if you can see it on here, but she has the loop on her belt.
Yeah.
You can see that very good, but that you can stash her wand in. And
yeah.
For me, that's one of those little things that I always love in action figures, is that there's a place to store weapons on the figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great too. I don't think I did that with mine, but I saw people post that, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And just the fact that she also has her knapsack, purse, handbag. I'm not sure what's that called, but
it's a satchel. Indiana Jones wears one.
But a satchel. There you go. I'm not going to reveal yet what's my favorite figure, but boys, this one's terrific. This one's fantastic, and especially that face sculpt and the eye paint, and what an Evil-Lyn to have.
Yeah, she looks good. I think she's my favorite Evil-Lyn figure to date.
So you jumped ahead. Okay, so that's
sorry. I keep jumping ahead.
That's okay. So Evil-Lyn is your top, or Masterverse Revelation Evil-Lyn is your top Evil-Lyn figure.
Yeah.
Let's see. For me, my favorite Lyn. I think I'm going to agree with you. I do like the 2000X Evil-Lyn, the figure. Classics is cool too. I actually prefer the classics with her hair, with her short hair. Okay. I guess that's the alternate head.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it a little difficult for me is she's not in her normal iconic costume. Sure. If she was in her iconic costume, it'd be no contest. This figure, is the best. But even in this alternate, dare I say, new Eternia, it's not new Eternia, but new Eternia costume.
Yeah, it's I think they call it the modern in the art book, the modern costume.
But new Eternia would be fitting, though, wouldn't it?
I think it would be. I think it would be a good look.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you is, we got classic costume Teela recently. Do you think we'll get a classic costume for Evil-Lyn, how she appears in episode 1?
No, because I think we have too many Evil-Lyns we need that are more.
I think I would agree. Yeah, I agree with that. We've got the sorceress, the bat sorceress, Evil-Lyn, and then God-Lyn.
Yep. They call her Dark-Lyn.
Is it? I see it both ways. Is it Dark-Lyn?
Well, on the Powerhouse Animation Studios model sheet, it says God-Lyn. And interestingly, it doesn't even have a hyphen or space. It just says God-Lyn, like one word. Yeah. But if you remember at the end of episode 9, spoiler alert, I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've seen the series multiple times. But in any case, spoiler alert, when Scarecrow raises...
Scareglow.
Oh, excuse me. Scareglow. Talk about Batman.
Yeah.
When Scareglow, appears with his army, the last thing I think he says is "For Dark-Lyn," and then it goes to credits. So he actually says Dark-Lyn.
See, and that's how I always heard it. But then I remember, and I could be misremembering this wrong, but I remember seeing her credited as God-Lyn in the credits.
Wow, I am like 99 certain he said Dark-Lyn. Like, there's no way to get
that, because no, that's what I thought he said too. But then I saw that in the credits, and this is all if I'm remembering right. I need to go back and actually pay attention to those things. And I wonder, I guess we could always put subtitles on to see what it actually says.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that right now on my Netflix app, so someone doesn't have to correct us in our comments. We can beat them to it.
Let's do it.
Because we know we're wrong all the time.
We're always wrong.
Let's see here. Oh. Okay. So let's go to episodes. I probably don't want to air this because we could get like copyright dinged.
Yeah.
So let me turn down the volume, and it's at the last second here. And okay, and we'll put on subtitles. Everyone, think of a topic. Move to topic as you wait, and discuss it among yourselves. Or should we give a topic? Moss Men, flocked or unflocked?
There we go. Pine fresh.
Here we go. For the everlasting power of Dark-Lyn. Yep. Let's see if I can show this.
Dark-Lyn, huh? Yeah, there it is. I can see it.
Yep. Dark-Lyn.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you know what? Either name is right, or wrong.
I like them both.
But the point is, I just don't think we'll see that classic costume, even though I would love it because we have those figures I think are more important at this point. I mean,
I think so too.
she's hardly in her classic Evil-Lyn costume enough to justify that figure over the rest. So,
because she has in the show, she has 4 alternate forms, correct? If you don't count the flashback sequences where she's young.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Teela only has the 3 different looks.
Yep.
So yeah, I can see him doing 3 figures for Teela, 3 figures for Evil-Lyn. And yeah, like you said, the Dark Lyn form and her sorceress form are the more important ones.
Yep. I agree. All right, so finally, and this is an easy question, is it thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down for Evil-Lyn?
Yeah, it's a thumbs up.
It's a thumbs up. Big thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
So this ends our basic Wave 1 analysis. So next time, we're going to move on to the deluxe figures of Wave 1, which is Battlecat and Skelegod. And then you guys are all going to forget what Colt said, and we're going to pick our favorite from the line, or from the wave. Excuse me. So he's going to do a Jedi mind trick, and you're not going to remember what he said.
Yeah. Evil-Lyn's going to use her hand casting hand. There we go.
This is not the
And
figure Colt loves.
Yeah, exactly. No one remembers what I said.
This is not the droids you're looking for. All right. So, Colt, are you ready for our in-depth analysis of Masters of the Universe Revelation Episode 2?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. The title is Poison Chalice. And we're going to go through this chronologically, and we're just going to go through this story and stop whenever we want to add commentary of our own. So let me change my little header here on YouTube. There we go. Episode 2, Poison Chalice Analysis. So the episode begins with the iconic exploding red lava rocks, and from within the Castle Grayskull drawbridge, the camera leaves to reveal the title Poisoned Chalice. We cut to a dark cabin, but it's actually a cabin connected to a cave. Double doors open, and 2 cloaked figures enter the cave wearing green masks that look very, very familiar and seem modeled after the classic vintage toy, the Road Ripper. Mm-hmm. Did you have a Road Ripper as a kid?
I did not. My cousin had one. So I remember playing with it, but I never personally had one.
I did. Those were fun. Now, there's an article on these masks on foreternia.com where producer Ted Biaselli was awesome enough to note in the comments that indeed it was a deliberate, these masks were a deliberate Road Ripper Easter egg, but their earlier mask designs evoked the vintage toy Blaster Hawk instead. But they moved away from that design because their mouths looked too much like vacuums. So they went to the Road Ripper design or inspiration instead. So thank you, Ted, for that nugget.
Yeah. So for anyone out there on YouTube watching, this is the minis version of that Road Ripper toy that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did a really good job, even though it's vertical, not horizontal, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way it,
yeah,
it's
very cool. I really dig the cloak and masks that we see here.
Yeah, it was a great Easter egg. So, and then if one wasn't enough, we were treated to Easter eggs times 2. When the scanner held by one of these mysterious figures are is the same scanner that Man-at-Arms used in the 1987 live-action film Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren.
And he uses it famously to track a cow.
And all farmers would love this device. What a great cow tracker.
It would be handy.
Yeah. Even better, a cow manure tracker.
There we
step.
go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So with the scanner, they are searching for something, and one of them, a revealed female voice, complains about the stench and goes on rifling through a giant pile of garbage as the other one watches. And while something else moves in the garbage, which is picked up by the scanner, the cloaked figure clears more trash, revealing a shiny glove. And just as she pulls it out, Stinkor jumps out from the garbage pile and grabs the cloaked woman's wrists.
Yep.
How great was it to see Stinkor? I was thrilled to see Stinkor.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a cool reveal, having hiding in a trash pile.
Yeah. So Stinkor tells them to get their soap stinking hands off his merch, you dirty mercs, and
which is such good alliteration and wordplay.
I just love that line, And then Stinkor takes off his mask, his breathing mask apparatus, and belches a boatload of toxic green gas. Teela pulls out her club-like weapon that extends to a staff and spins the gas away. And I'm going to pause right there because as time goes by, this Swiss Army knife weapon of Teela's, called the bow staff and designed by Andra, as revealed in the Masters of the Universe Revelation art book, is really going to become a tool and a weapon that would even make Batman jealous.
Yes,
and that's how I worked in Batman.
Very cool weapon.
Yeah.
So one thing that I noticed is that there's actually a continuity error between the prequel comic and the events of Revelation, because like you said, this was a weapon designed by Andra, but we actually see Teela using it in the prequel comic during her adventures with He-Man, when they're getting into their tussles at Snake Mountain. She's actually using this extendable staff. It's designed the same way. Not a big deal, but interesting.
That one was slightly different.
Was it?
No, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. That one was took Duracell batteries, not energizers, and was designed by Man-at-Arms.
There it is.
There it is.
Continuity saved.
But it would really suit. It would really fit well on Batman's utility belt. So it's something like he would use. But
it reminds me of something that Robin would use.
Yeah.
Because Robin was often seen using a bow staff.
So next we see Stinkor whacked out through the air from the Swamp Town Trash Cave. Another name that we get from the Masters of the Universe Revelation art book, and he lands on a produce cart in Swamp Town. And then following Stinkor outside, one of the mercenaries removes their mask, revealing to be basically a new character known as Andra. And she asks, and I said basically, guys, so we know there's a little history with this character, just slight. But it's new to Filmation, it's new to this continuity. And Andra asks if the other mercenary knows this stinker, and the other merc corrects her, saying Stinkor, and saying, he's from her old life. And the other merc takes off her mask too, revealing her to be Dum 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 Tila with a brand new haircut, triggering hundreds of fans to rage on the internet that Kevin Smith killed their childhood.
The haircut that started a war.
A fan war that and a ideological war on YouTube that maybe still exists to this day. So,
and funnily enough, this isn't the first haircut that Tila has had in Motu history. In Filmation, we see a flashback of her during her days at the academy, and she has a shorter haircut. She cuts her hair in the 2000X series. Well, He-Man cuts her hair by throwing his sword, and it slices a bit of her hair off. But then in the 2012 comic series, she changes her hairstyle from blonde to red. It's just, I think it's just fun that so much ado was made about Tila's haircut when it's not the first time that she's had her hair done.
You know what?
It's silly.
I'll just get into this quick, but I actually read into this, guys, and there's a real psychology behind Tila cutting her hair after a traumatic event. I saw it was referred to as not a removal, an emotional shedding process, and this was described clinically by clinically experienced women, not men, women, that the simple act of cutting their hair means so much after something traumatic occurs, and it's actually common during a crisis, any crisis. It's about immediate change. It's about an immediate reclaiming of control in one's life where previously one felt out of control. It's real psychology, guys, and it's a shame that so many fans couldn't grasp that.
Yeah, it had a purpose.
Yep.
And it was also, I think, it was either in this one or the follow-up writer commentary episodes that Kevin Smith did with each of the writers, where they talk about this and how it was supposed to be a visual indicator of Tila's anger and bitterness towards her past and the events of episode 1.
Yeah.
They wanted, the psychology part that you talked about, but they also wanted an easy way to visually identify with Tila's character arc, what she was going through. Which is common in animation and visual mediums. Like, that's a common trick that artists use.
And it all makes sense. So, and be honest with you, you guys can mock me, but I really like the haircut. I mean, I still prefer the longer hair look, but
sure, it's not bad. She looks great.
Yeah, she looks great, and I have her figure on display here, and I think it's a great look for her. I love it, and I'm glad they went that route. And well, that's enough about her hair. So, so next, Tila and Andra are in what appears to be a house of worship, and it's called the Temple of Globula. And the priestess there reveals what Tila and Andra stole back from Stinkor was the glove of Globula, a magical glove that first appeared in a Masters of the Universe UK comic magazine that depicted that magical artifact. Apparently, rivaled the power of Castle Grayskull and was even stolen, I think, by Hordak at one time. So I never read the comic, but there's an interesting history behind that glove, and it's also tied to a book as well. And I saw the book actually in the temple as well.
Yeah.
If you look for it, you'll see it there. It's a blue book.
It's Yeah, I think it's bound in red, if I remember right.
Oh, is it red? I thought it was blue.
Yeah.
I'm not going to check. Reddish blue.
It's a reddish blue.
Or is it bluish red?
Well, it depends on the angle. So
it's a red book under blue lighting.
Yeah, there you go. There it is.
Moving on. So, without the glove, the priestess said that the followers, that would be Stinkor's group. The followers felt empty and broken. And Andra says, no glove, no love. And I got a kick out of that line. So, as corny as it is. And the priestess also reveals that Stinkor stole the glove to sell it to the highest bidder. And that magical relics sell at a premium now that magic has left Eternia. So Tila tries to convince the priestess that they don't need magic, just tech, and reveals that Andra is actually an engineer. But it all falls on deaf ears with the priestess.
Yeah, the priestess definitely doesn't look too impressed.
No. She believes in the old ways. So suddenly, an old, mysterious woman appears in the temple, seemingly out of thin air, and introducing herself as Majestra, and offers both Tila and Andra a job. Now, at this point, Colt, did you know she was really Evil-Lyn?
Yeah.
Okay, me too.
I recognize the voice. The voice it's Lena Headey doing an old woman voice, but also Majestra was a fairly common disguise that Evil-Lyn used in the Filmation series.
Yeah, and one of the more popular episodes titled "The Shaping Staff." Evil-Lyn pretended to be a traveling magician named Majestra. Now, she wasn't an old woman, she was just a young woman with white hair, shorter white hair.
Short white hair.
Oh no. But I was like, "Yep, this is Evil-Lyn." So for diehard Filmation fans, especially, yeah, this was no surprise. But I didn't feel like I was missing anything because of it.
No, but and like, I guess storytelling tropes, she definitely puts off some suspicious vibes, just the way she talks, and she appears from the shadows, and it's all just a little bit spooky the way she's presented.
Sure. Like the hints are there. If you don't know the name Majestra, if you don't recognize the voice, you still are squinting, saying something's up with her. So Majestra offers both ladies a well-paying job of stealing back an artifact too, an old goblet from a place that might be a bit of a challenge. Majestra says the goblet isn't magical, just sentimental, and it belonged to a dead friend, her best friend. And she said that she can't bring him back, but would pay any price to hold a tiny piece of him again. And me knowing she's Evil-Lyn and the dead best friend is probably referring to Skeletor, this all doesn't feel completely an act to me. That some of these words feel like they have a kernel of truth to them.
Yeah, I think the sentiment that she's presenting is genuine. And I also think, because the way the camera work happens during that delivery of the line, there's a focus on her face, but then it also shifts to Tila's face, and I think it's also referring to Tila herself in a way when it talks about a dead best friend. I think that's purposeful.
Yeah, I would agree. So, all right, so we both kind of felt that vibe.
Yeah.
And so after Majestra reveals the goblet is at Snake Mountain, Tila says, "You got a deal." And next we're at Snake Mountain, but wait a minute. We seem to be in the past because we see a classic looking Tila stuck in a pit before Snake Mountain's entrance. And that's when we realize we're in a flashback.
Yeah.
And to sidestep a moment, everything to this point was still written by Kevin Smith and not the episode's credited writer, Dia Mishra, if I'm pronouncing it. Dia Mishra, I think it was.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because originally this portion up to this moment was intended as part of episode 1, not 2. Stinkor, the glove, all apparently originally was in the first episode script. Kevin Smith revealed this, that episode 2 was actually supposed to begin with the flashback.
Mm-hmm.
He revealed that in his commentary video, but it was all changed, which I definitely believe was the right choice.
Yeah. It's smart to end episode 1 where it ended.
Definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah, it carries more of that emotional impact with it.
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't feel the weight as much if we suddenly jump to the future. So So in his flashback, classic Tila is stuck in a net, falling through a trapdoor at Wolf Gate, just like we acted out thousands of times as kids with our old vintage Motu figures and our Snake Mountain playset. And I just love that. And
it's a fun callback.
It is. For anyone at Snake Mountain, they immediately know what's going on here. And they're very familiar with this layout. And well, Tila tries to climb out of the pit at Snake Mountain, but the walls are just too darn slippery. But suddenly there's a noise, and the tail of Whiplash suddenly falls over the edge. So Tila smiles and scales the tail. And upon climbing out, Tila sees an unconscious Whiplash and He-Man standing before her. And Tila says, let's finish this. He-Man says, it would be rude not to share. Corny as ever. And then Whiplash comes to just in time, and they both finish Whiplash off by He-Man grabbing Tila by her wrist and whipping her around till she kicks the scary villain right into the pit. And then He-Man and Tila both look at Wolfgate, and He-Man says, "I'll go if you go."
This is an important line. It's one that's reiterated throughout the series to great effect.
Yep. We don't realize at this moment the importance of this line.
Yeah.
And the importance of them working together with this roundabout kick.
Yeah. Two very important callbacks established in this scene.
Yep.
Or not callbacks, but themes.
Or it will call back to this.
It will call back to this moment. Yeah.
Yep. So now we go back to present day in the same spot, and Andra and Tila are standing before Wolfgate that is much more different than before. Modified.
It's laser Wolfgate.
Yeah. It's got these lasers.
Yeah.
And it looked like one of the eyes of Wolfgate was like lit up even.
Kind of. Maybe like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's different. There's more circuitry at the side, like control panels and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, there's just numerous technological advancements and heavily fortified. And because the gate is so heavily fortified, Tila predicts that no one will find it necessary to watch it and that they can open the trapdoor, jump in the net below, and start digging and tunneling into Snake Mountain, exploiting its one weakness, that it's a mountain. And you can dig. It's dirt, and you can dig through it. And if you guys notice, once again, it's Tila's bow staff that has now become a shovel. So
very cool.
Quite an effective weapon. Yep. So Tila and Andra bust open a vent and finally make it into Snake Mountain. But the interior looks much different now than before. It looks cybernetic. There's all these industrial neon fluorescent lights, these long pipes that I assume have wires in it. I don't know if you made that assumption too, Colt, but you know how. Yeah, I forget. I think there's a word for it, but I just assume there's a lot of wiring. It's not like
it has more of an industrial look to it. Lots more wiring, lots more vents, things like that, as opposed to how Snake Mountain, we would assume Snake Mountain to look.
Yeah,
it looks like it's had an upgrade, much like Wolfgate outside. There's been some changes.
Has a lot more metal and circuitry in its hallways.
Yep.
And I really appreciate Bear McCreary's synthesized score here.
Yeah, it's one of the cool. I think it's one of my favorite tunes that he does with this soundtrack, out of many very good tunes that he does. But the Motherboard music is pretty good, very good.
It is wonderful. I couldn't pick out my favorite if I tried. There's so many favorites, that the whole darn thing is my favorite. But it really stood out here. It sounded like it was a synthesized score. Very electronic, and it was machine-like, and it sounded fitting for a Tron movie almost at first, or something. Or harken me back to like some of the themes from Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah,
but
kind of that 80s synth vibe to it.
Yep. Or Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it first started out, and then it like morphed into the sounds of like a machine factory to me, with sounds of springs and gears and sprockets, and it just evoked a robotic assembly line.
And it has one other layer to it that I noticed recently, is it has a monotonous layer to it, which kind of evokes a chant, almost like it has that like a monastic chant quality to it as well.
Yeah, the motherboard. Yeah, I mean, apparently that's Bear's secret, because I was watching a YouTube video. I know I'm taking a left turn here, but I was watching a YouTube video where Bear and Kevin were talking about the theme for Man at Arms, and apparently he thought words up for it first, where it was Man at Arms, he is so cool. Man in arms, man in arms. And I first I want to apologize, guys. I cannot sing, and we lost half our viewers.
I mean, it sounds like you can sing to me.
Man.
I think you know where your calling is.
Well, thank you. I'll be putting out my record album next year. Bear, you can hit me up if you need me. But yeah, he is so cool, and he apparently does that with either a lot of his songs or all of his songs. So I'm not surprised that we hear the Motherboard a chant.
It's fun because it sounds like what we would do as kids, playing with the toys on our living room floor, having singing along with the characters that we're playing around with, making up little songs for them.
Yeah, but it seems like, and I'll have to watch the video again, but it seemed like it was actually part of the way he would create these songs. Like it was part of the development process.
Cool.
He would just actually sing it first before like writing a single note down. Yeah, it is cool.
That's neat.
And then, and once I hear the music, I can't get those words out of my head, even though it's never sung.
Yeah.
But yeah, the music here is just terrific. And to move off of Bear, so Tila and Andra hear someone coming and duck behind metal barrels. And what first appears like a normal man with a shaved head wearing a purple and black cloak reveals an awful truth. When the face of the man, like, I guess, turns to the mercenaries because I guess he suspects someone is there, it turns out to be a part man, part machine. It's a cyborg.
Yeah, he's got a Terminator face.
I wouldn't say quite a Terminator face because he's got these green neon. I don't know. You had to remove the flesh, and this looked like it was built on the flesh. For a Terminator, yeah. But it was certainly wild. And I thought maybe when I was first watching that, I was like, "Oh, is that cyborg going to go their way?" But no, he just puts his cloaked hood back on, and more arrive. A whole line of disciples, and they look like a satanic cult from an 80s movie.
Yeah.
And Tila and Andra wait for the row of cultists to pass, then subdues two from behind, stealing their cloaks and ultimately blending in the back of the line. And again, this is the second time I'm going to make you watch this movie. And again, it's the second time this series evokes 1982's Conan the Barbarian feature film to me, that starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom, a cult leader. And they had a long scene where Conan infiltrates a cult as well. It's a snake cult. And the snake cult of Thulsa Doom, and he sneaks with the cult and gets up into the Mountain of Power, a place where he normally would be killed.
Yeah.
So I was thinking this. I was thinking a little Star Wars, how Luke Skywalker and Han Solo dress up like stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking even a little of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, kind of has that vibe to it.
Malaram, Sularam. Yeah. So the cultists eventually push into a circular like chamber surrounded by neon stripped columns, and it actually reveals itself to be the mouth of the snake on Snake Mountain, which is just so cool.
Yeah,
I would have loved if there was one like outside shot, where you see the mouth of the snake lit up, and all of these disciples chanting. It would have been wild.
Yeah, would have been cool.
Yeah, but it's still awesome. And so then we hear a prophet speaking. We don't see him, but we hear him, and he's talking about magic that has wreaked havoc over Eternia for way too long. And as the cult line keeps moving, Andra catches a glimpse of Whiplash, who is now enhanced with a cybernetic eye and a wrecking ball like tail. And he's looking cool. And then shortly after, a blast attack is noticed too. Then Trapjaw. And there is a huge what is it called? Dais?
Yeah,
I think Dais. Okay. So there's a huge dais in the front of this chamber with a gigantic statue of Screech, which is apparently their deity, their object of worship. And we hear the voice, still don't see him. We hear the voice of the prophet speaking again that the flesh is weak, but not the machine, and motherboard is forever strong. And then we see a hand holding a chalice, probably the goblet that Tila and Andra are looking for, being filled with a strange black reflective liquid. And then the prophet's hand reveals to be belonging to Triclops. And first, can I say that actor Henry Rollins is absolutely brilliant, doing a fantastic job here, delivering these basically delicious lines of dialogue, so juicy, glory be unto who live and diode in the mighty motherboard. I love that, live and diode, I
Yeah.
mean, it's so awesome. And I really like Triclops' outfit here too,
The
the
Pope
priest.
look.
Yeah, the priest robe and that hat. You're right. It evokes to me the hat of the Pope in
Mhm.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
And he's also wearing, like, I don't know, is it a scarf? Is it a sash that is around his neck and just hangs down?
Some type of vestment of,
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's
yeah.
called.
Which is, there it's very interesting because he's preaching about the horrors of magic, and yet he and his followers are dressed in the raiments of religion and worship, which is often tied to a belief in the supernatural.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. It's not one and the same though, right?
No.
Like, I think a lot of people. I was born in a very religious household where, she thought, my mother actually thought, and this is no joke, that stuff like Harry Potter movies encouraged the teachings of witchcraft.
Sure.
And there was God and the Holy Spirit and all that belief, but that was separate from magic. Magic
Yeah.
was evil. Magic was evil. The kingdom of heaven and the path to God was good, and there was a clear delineation between the two. So I can see it. I can see the connection you're making, but I lived the division between the two.
Sure.
So yeah, but well, whatever that scarf and sash is, I'm not sure of the technical name, but it also featured the symbols of Triclops' eyes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
triangle, the square, and the circle, right?
yep, yep. And I just love it. And over there, I have them displayed in that robe.
Yeah.
Do you have Triclops?
I do. Yeah. He's
Okay.
up here on the shelf behind me.
Now, do you have him displayed in his
Yep.
religious
In his,
getup?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually, so I actually have him displayed in his normal classic look, and then I found a spare He-Man on clearance, and I dressed him up with the alternate head and the robe.
That's very thrifty of you.
Well,
Very
thank
good.
you.
So I just love the look. I didn't even think of that. So even though I think Triclops is a fantastic figure and I love his original look, and he still has some green, right, in that
Uh-huh.
Colt costume. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's in the Pope hat.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the back, or it's not
Yeah, I
completely
think so.
escaping. You could find some of his original green,
Yeah, it looks like
but
there's a little bit of green in there.
yeah. So cult leader Triclops says you drink from the cup and you will save yourself from carnal chaos. And they have two what looks like quote unquote volunteers. What looks to be a father and his daughter. And at least the father looks a little hesitant at first of what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the father drinks from the cup, and then the body horror begins. And screaming and circuits appear in his body. Tentacles burst from his back. I mean, I guess tentacle coils or wires, let's just say.
Yeah.
And his eyes, or his one eye, I guess his right eye, his pupil becomes red, and it pushes out of his head on a coil, and a rotary saw blade grows out of his arm. And I love Triclops' response to all this. He watches him transform in all this pain. He doesn't even flinch. He just looks and then says, "Let us pray." uh, And so far, I'm just loving this stuff.
Oh, it's very cool.
Yeah. So then Tila decides to be the distraction, and Andra goes for the cup. And Tila disrobes and says, Trapjaw and Triclops, I thought I smelled dirty motor oil. And oh man, and I love when Trapjaw responds, Tila, how dare you sully the sanctity of Snake Mountain? Oh, oh, I just love that. I wish there was a voice box on my Triclops figure that I could just push that button and he says that every time.
It's pretty good.
It is.
Now it's the voice of Diedrich Bader, who also voiced King Randor.
Mm-hmm. He did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't even recognize the voice in Trapjaw, but I did recognize the voice in King Randor. There used to be a sitcom on called, I think, American Housewife, and he played the husband. I know he's been in a lot of shows, but that was the most recently. And I, sometimes I would hear
him. To tie it back to Batman, he was the voice of Batman in Batman: The Brave and the Bold series, the animated series.
There you go. There you go. See, it was all planned, guys. It's all connected. Yeah, these episode titles, there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
Yep.
So okay, so Triclops explains to Tila that the defeat of Skeletor made them see the error in their ways. That
the insipid Skeletor.
The insipid.
He refers to him, which is I love it. I love that delivery.
It's great lines, Henry. Yeah. Great job. Yeah, and basically Skeletor's the insipid Skeletor. His failure was relying on magic because magic is an empty promise, a false god, a sinner's solution. The true power of Eternia has always been man's mastery of technology. Thank you.
It was very good.
You're too kind, Colt. Tila's not convinced, and fighty ensues. And Tila takes out disciples with her cool bow staff again, which turns into a sword now. We had a sword, a shovel, a staff. I don't know, a lot of things. And but with her bow staff, now a sword, she slices the rotary arm saw off their new disciple, the father that just transformed. And then Tila battles Blast Attack and quickly dodges a tail strike from Whiplash that sends Blast Attack into the dais and almost triggers his detonation. But I guess, yeah, it was Blast Attack the first time around that quickly presses his little keypad and gets and stops the countdown, And then after Tila knocks out Whiplash, Tila goes to save the girl, but surprise, surprise, the girl's already infected, and her father almost subdue Tila, unconscious, until Andra.
The father grabs her from behind, but then wraps his tentacle wire eyeball around her neck and is choking her.
Yeah,
it's
awesome.
Just horrifying.
It is, but it is cool, horrifying.
It's cool. Yeah, it's very cool, but it's scary at the same time.
But Tila is saved by Andra, who disables the father disciple with one of her throwing stars. So then Trapjaw attacks Andra. So she shoves the arm Tila severed into his mouth, and Trapjaw chomps away until Andra quickly hotwires the rotary saw that springs into Trapjaw's face, and oof, he goes down.
Pretty intense.
So brutal. Yeah,
Well, and there's that squelching sound too of the saw meeting his flesh. Just
and when I first watched it, I'm like, "Are they gonna show it? Are we gonna see it?" And they didn't show it. And maybe it's better they didn't show it, you know? So, I
Yeah.
think there are still kids watching this, but,
Yeah, for sure.
So, more fighty fight occurs. Andra I've been doing good with Andra and not calling her Andra. By
Yeah.
the way, I know someone named Andra as well, so
Nice.
this is like this is a struggle for me, both, Amon and Andra. Andra grabs the goblet, what they're looking for,
Mhm.
and grabs Tila's wrist, and they do the move that we saw in the earlier flashback, where now Tila is the brawn and swinging Andra around like He-Man did with her,
Mhm.
as Andra kicks Blast Attack into the arms of Whiplash and setting off the countdown to his Blast Attack. And before Blast Attack can stop it, Andra throws a star into his shut-off keypad, or whatever it is, solidifying the countdown. Then, boom. So it was nice to see, Tila taking the place of He-Man, and Andra taking the place of Tila and doing that move that they used to do. Yeah.
And it's kind of a cool little, I guess the way I interpreted it and read it is that despite Tila's anger and bitterness about what happened in the past with Adam's secret and everything, she still took the lesson she learned with him as He-Man to the point where it's almost muscle memory for her, even down to, we see later the line comes up again. But her fighting style and stuff like that, there's a residual memory there. Even if she's not doing it consciously, it's part of who she is.
And it feels like, and it's going to feel like this more, but it feels like at this point that Andra's filling that gap,
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's like, it's an interesting role reversal as well, because she's the brawn, or there's two she's. Tila's the brawn and Andra's the brains now, right?
Yeah.
So Tila's the one swinging Andra around, and it is interesting that dynamic is repeated here. And
and I think it's also important to know that Andra is kind of representative of how Tila was when she was younger. She was still hopeful and still optimistic about things and eager to be a hero. Whereas Tila now is kind of world weary and kind of definitely more pessimistic than she used to be. And I think that's the intent of the writing of these characters.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that aspect. And
it's very cool.
Yep. So both Andra and Tila start running for the exit. Andra disables Doomseeker drones in pursuit with a couple of her throwing stars. And Andra grabs onto Tila. They jump off a ledge and land safely on the cavern floor thanks to a grappling hook that shoots out of Tila's fabulous bow staff.
Very cool.
It's a staff, it's a club, it's a shovel, it's a sword, and now it's a grappling hook. This thing is awesome.
Yeah.
Andra disables some more technical acolytes with her throwing stars. And then well, maybe you can help me understand what happens next, Colt. So Tila grabs a throwing star from Andra and throws it into the edge of the nearby swamp water, causing the creature in the swamp water to lurch out and kill all the disciples.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't see the star cause an explosion. I didn't see the star cause an electric shock. So what stirred the monster here? Just a little splish, a little splash?
I think that's what's implied, is that any disturbance of this water awakens the beast within.
Jeez, he's a light sleeper then.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just very hungry and he's just, but I guess if you ever
with the
been to like,
people running outside and yelling and what
you
have
think
you,
he'd be more active.
yeah. So I was just curious if I was missing
Yeah.
something or.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't remember an explosion or anything like that happening. It just seems that it reacts immediately to a rock, a little pebble.
Yeah.
In this case, a star, but just plinking into the water.
And the way this is not like a rock that will make a big sploosh. This will cut through. It's very throwing star is very thin, very narrow.
Yeah,
so it's not going to. It's not going to make much of a noise. So okay, so there really is no explanation. So
it would have been nice. I think it would have been nice to have a little explosion there because.
Yeah, or a little electric shock, right, in the water.
Yeah, something to show.
Anger.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you're going to see that I'm going to be confused a little more as this episode goes on. So,
okay.
But so Andra and Tila escape thanks to the monster. Or actually, Andra likes to call her T.
Yeah.
Hey, T. Which I like. And there's this great transition. Me in the transitions, Colt, where Triclops is staring and you see his eye and it dissolves into the Temple of Globula's stained glass window.
Yeah.
And then in that surrounding city of the temple, Majestra appears out of thin air again and poof, and pays the two mercenaries for the goblet and then asks if they are interested in finishing the job. And Tila says, we did. But Majestra counters, what has been gained must now be given. And offers to pay them double if they help her deliver the goblet to Castle Grayskull.
Mm-hmm.
And Majestra asks Tila, she says, tell me, Captain, have you ever wondered what you left behind? And Tila says she's done wondering, but Andra pulls Tila aside, saying she doesn't trust Majestra. And because of that, someone has to keep her eye on her and keep an eye on whatever suspiciously she's trying to do at Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
And that even though Tila is out of the hero business, Andra doesn't have to be. And it's her chance to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
And Tila warns Andra that being a hero can swallow you whole. But Andra says it's a risk that she's willing to take. So after struggling it with internally, mulling it over basically in her head, Tila insists that she will go with Andra. She says, I'll go if you go, hearkening back to the bond He-Man and Tila shared in the earlier flashback where Tila once again takes on the He-Man role now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's more of the same that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that surrogate He-Man, basically. So the scene dissolves to an outside barren hall of wisdom. And we hear Tila explain that after He-Man and Skeletor's final battle, King Randor declared the hall a forbidden zone, which reminded me of Planet of the Apes. I think that's what they called. But basically that they're breaking the law just by being there. And but Majestra walks right inside Castle Grayskull without them and approaches an old depleted sorceress standing where the orb of power used to be, with an ember of magic floating between her hands. And Majestra says the sorceress looks old and acts jealous of the magic she still maintains until Tila calls out Majestra's ruse and says, I think it's time you tell us what you really want, Evil-Lyn. Mild shock.
Gasp.
Gasp. But Lena Headey as Majestra does this spectacular, outstanding, maniacal laugh as she transforms into Evil-Lyn, and her goblet transforms into the head of Skeletor's Havoc Staff.
Yep.
And Evil-Lyn shoves the Havoc Staff against Sorceress's floating ember, and the Sorceress gasps. And because she gasps, I think Teela thinks Evil-Lyn is hurting her and transforms her bow staff into a spear. So it's a staff, a club, a shovel, a sword, a grappling hook, and now a spear. And throws it at Evil-Lyn. And just as it's about to hit its target, Cringer jumps out of nowhere and snatches the bow spear out from midair. And Cringer saved Evil-Lyn? What?
I think this was more surprising than Evil-Lyn revealing herself.
It was a nice surprise too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cringer says they don't have time for any more fighting. And Evil-Lyn reveals that she made this journey to actually strengthen the sorceress with the little magic that remained in the Havoc Staff. And Teela asks, why would Evil-Lyn help the sorceress? And the sorceress reveals, because I asked her to.
Yeah.
To save the last ember of true magic in Eternia. Sorceress says that their interests are aligned. And personally, look, I love to hear this, because for me, some of the coolest episodes in the classic 1983 Filmation series, episodes like Evil Seed, To Save Skeletor, The Witch and the Warrior. Yeah. Were episodes where the bad guys had to align with the good guys to defeat a common threat. And I often just found Motu at its creative best when both sides, good and bad, had to work together. So at this point,
and that's essentially what Cringer says in that great line delivery. He says, whether you serve Snake Mountain or Grayskull, we all have to work together now.
Yeah. So I just love where this story as an entirety is going. So, all right. So the sorceress reveals that if the ember goes out, the last of Eternia's magic is gone, and tells Evil-Lyn to guard the ember with her life. So Evil-Lyn absorbs the ember with her wand or scepter, or whatever you call it, and the sorceress transforms back into a regular human woman, older and frail. And Cringer catches her from falling and tells Teela they all have to work together now, otherwise Eternia dies. And you get these voices for free, Colt, aren't you?
I'm just glad you're doing them.
Someone has to.
That's right.
So Evil-Lyn explains that to everybody that magic gave birth to Eternia. And Eternia is the first planet in all of creation, and it's the nexus of space and time. Now, Colt, here is where I struggle with a logic issue, and maybe you can help me understand.
Okay.
Lyn then says that the Sword of Power binds the magic. The Sword of Power binds the magic to Eternia. And now that the sword is gone, the magic is gone with it. And I'm thinking that doesn't quite make sense. And doesn't Lyn mean the orb of power bound the magic to Eternia. Not the sword, but the sword, which is a conduit, could call on the magic and draw it back to reform the orb. Because there was a time on Eternia when the power sword did not exist, before the days of King Grayskull, but magic still existed and magic was still bound to Eternia.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is one of the I don't know if it's an editing thing, but it's definitely, as it's presented, it's a little bit of a plot hole because I can't reconcile this logic. And it kind of, we don't, emphasis on the orb of power doesn't ever really come up again after the orb explosion. It's all, now everything is kind of tied to the power sword itself, which is, as you pointed out, the power sword didn't exist until King Grayskull forged it.
Yeah, in the prequel comic, King Grayskull opened the pyramid, the encasing of the orb, and was talking to the voices of the ancients in regards to how he could save his son. And this was before the forging of the power sword.
In fact, the desire to defeat the Orlax is what that was the catalyst to forge the Sword of Power.
Right. So this is where I'm struggling. I'm talking about the Morning Star. That's a Dungeons and Dragons term, I think. But I'm thinking of the Throwing Star, and now this line. There's certain fixes could have easily repaired these gaps in logic.
Yeah.
By just making an electrical shock with that Throwing Star, and just the instead of saying the Sword of Power, just instead of saying the Sword of Power binds the magic to Eternia, just say the Orb of Power binds the magic to Eternia.
But the sword is, like you said, but the sword is needed as a conduit to call the power back.
Yeah, which is exactly what happened, because spoiler alert, when he does call the power back, the orb is reforged or reformed, right? That would be the proper term. Yeah. Yep. And then encloses back in its pyramid. So the writing is a little iffy here.
It's a little sloppy in this episode.
That's a fair word. So all right. So and it won't be the last time I'm caught on sloppy writing, and we're towards the end of the episode. So Lyn says, without magic, Eternia will rot and die like an unwatered houseplant. And when Eternia dies, the rest of the universe will follow. The sorceress tells Teela the only way to bring magic back is to call on the power of Grayskull. Exactly what we were saying. And to do that, they'll need to reform the power sword, which was divided into two halves during the blast. Lyn explains that legend has it the Sword of Power was made of two ancient blades of steel, one forged in the Hall of Heroes in Preternia, the other forged in Subternia, the land of the dead, which apparently both swords returned to the realms they were created in after they split, after they absorbed the Orb of Power. Which is fine. So Sorceress then tells Teela she must find the two halves and reforge the Sword of Power using the Ember. Teela rejects the quest, saying she built a life away from magic, and now they want her to save magic. Sorceress seems to begin to tell Teela about her magical lineage, but Teela cuts her off, something that will frequently happen in this series.
If Teela would just let people finish their thoughts.
Let her finish her sentence, man.
But it's that classic Teela hot-headed personality.
And I think we learn also later on that Teela knows, but she just doesn't want to hear it. Right? She kind of knows it in her soul and her body. She feels
I think she has an inkling of something else about, she might not know the particulars, but she knows there's something about her.
Right. She knows there's a secret within her. She can feel it. She doesn't know exactly what it is, and she fears it. I think Scareglow brings that out of her a little too.
Yeah, and that's kind of her. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but that's kind of her big moment of starting to understand the bigger picture.
Yep. So Tila stares at the spot that Adam died, and suddenly she gets angry. And she leaves saying, let this crumbling castle keep its dead, and let all the selfish secrets die with them.
Brutal line.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
So she storms off, but Cringer stops Tila and reminds her that she named him Cringer because he was always afraid. And because of that, he can recognize in Tila that although she's hiding it, she's afraid too. She's not angry, he tells her. She's scared. Scared that Adam trusted her with all of this. And she's scared that she's going to let Adam down. Tila says it turned out she barely knew Adam, but Cringer knew who he really was. And Cringer counters, so did you. He was really your best friend. So Cringer then asks Tila, do you think Adam would have made the sacrifice he did if he didn't know you'd be here to protect Eternia when he was gone? And this is where I get lost again in this episode. The logic of this statement. Do you think Adam would have made the sacrifice he did if he didn't know you'd be here to protect Eternia when he was gone? Yes, he would. Yes, Adam would have made that sacrifice to save Eternia if Tila was there or not. If Tila wasn't alive, Adam wouldn't have absorbed the blasts and saved Eternia? Of course he would. So I don't get quite what Cringer is saying here. You know, we learned later on Preternia that Adam had no idea in advance of the magic problem that would occur on Eternia, that they would be experiencing years later. So it can't be Adam would let Eternia die without Tila there to save it because he knew Eternia would die years later anyway, when the last of the magic drained away. So again, it's another statement I couldn't balance logically. I don't know if you have anything that you could clear that up for.
I think it's one of those moments where the logic is lacking, as you pointed out, but I think the heart of the moment is what's more important in this instance. But it all comes down to, like we've said before, it's a little bit sloppy.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think it's necessarily a nail in the coffin of why episode 2 is a bad episode. I'm not saying it's a bad episode, but it's just, I think to me it's one of the messier episodes as far as the writing goes, you know, because there's a lot of supposition that we have to make as the viewer to get to the intended point of what they're trying to do.
I agree, and I don't see, you know, the episode has been great. I've enjoyed so much of it so far, but I feel like the record starts skipping at the end, and I keep getting caught up. And I get caught on a line, and then the other lines are said. I'm like, wait, what? You know, that didn't make sense, and it does feel sloppy. And I love the writing that she did here, and there's just a couple things that just needed to be polished up. And we're not talking big fixes. We're not talking paragraphs of dialogue. We're just like changing a sentence, you know. And it also tripped me up one more time. Probably the last time, but it's when it's what something Cringer said again that I had a problem with. So Cringer then tells Tila, I may have known Adam's big secret, sure, but Tila, you knew his heart. And I wish that was rewritten, that line, you know, but Tila, you had his heart. Because quite frankly, Cringer knew Adam's heart too, just like his other close friends did. Arguably, Orko, Man-at-Arms, Cringer may have known what's inside Adam's heart more than Tila because they knew Adam wasn't this lazy, spoiled prince. But Adam allowed himself to be perceived this awful way to protect everyone, to be selfless, to be the selfless, noble He-Man. So I watched this episode and I wish Cringer said, I held this secret, sure, but you held his heart, insinuating love, right?
Yeah.
That I can process better and not continually hung up every time I watch this episode, because they knew his heart too. Cringer knew his heart. I knew Adam's secret, but you knew his heart. Guess what? You guys knew it too, maybe even more than Tila, because Adam let you in further. Mm-hmm. So I just wish they said you had, I knew his secret, you had his heart. And I think just that one change of a word suddenly doesn't trip me up and logically just makes sense, and I'm loving it. So
yeah, I think what the problem is here is I can appreciate what they're trying to do, and what it is that they're trying to do is they're trying to establish that there's a bond between Tila and Adam.
Yes.
That has been a part of who they are, and it's been a part of their relationship for as long as they've been together when Adam was alive, right? And that even though she didn't know he was He-Man, there was still this closer connection to where maybe Tila sensed more, similar to how she senses more about herself and her actual destiny, that she senses that there's more to Adam than he lets on because she knows him. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what they're trying to do. It just doesn't quite land as well as it could have.
Right. Yeah. If you look at the logic where Cringer says, I knew his secret, you knew his heart, versus I knew his secret, you had his heart. The second half just makes more sense, because we all know Cringer knew his heart as well. He knew what a good person, he knew more. The sacrifice.
They're laying these early threads that there's a bond between Tila and Adam, and it's a love bond. As the series continues on, that's where it eventually leads to. But it's just this idea that people who are close, they know what each other is capable of, and what they're the words skipping on me, what their capacity to be is. They know that about each other, and whether it's defined or spoken out loud or something like that, people who are close, that share a close bond, know each other on a deeper level, and that's the point that they're trying to put across. But the dialogue is just a little bit sloppy for me, and the logic doesn't add up, like you're saying. So like I said before, I can appreciate what they're doing, and I still feel the emotional beat that they're aiming for. But I think I would have felt it a little bit stronger had the logic been there and had the writing just been a little bit cleaner and tighter.
Yeah. We'll wrap that part with a bow in a minute. Let's finish out the episode. So Tila is won over by Cringer's heartfelt talk and says, good kitty, and we'll take on the quest to reforge the sword. And Andre's all in, excitedly saying, race you to hell, and I love her enthusiasm here, and Tiffany Smith does a great job.
Yeah.
Evil-Lyn joins the fellowship, saying there's no chance she'll let the children steal all the glory, Then Tila says they're going to need one more person, the only weapon master on the entire planet with the skills to reforge the sword of power. Then we cut to a man standing in front of a small hut, gazing out into the night sky. He puts on a cloak and a hood, turns to the camera, and it's Duncan. Cut to black. So there we go. The poison chalice. Now, I hopefully I didn't sound like I was nitpicking, guys. This is really the only episode that starts to trip me up, but I still enjoyed this episode. but it does stand as my least favorite episode of the series. I love the ideas Poison Chalice introduces. Andra, the technical, the good guys and the bad guys teaming up. But overall, it's the least favorite of mine for the logical hiccups that I find, the logic hiccups, right? And it's in my nature personally to, unfortunately, I just get stuck on those sometimes, especially after repeat viewings. You might miss it the first time, but the second time you go, wait, what?
Yeah.
But even with all that, I just want to say I still very much enjoyed this episode. It's like me loving donuts, and you hand me an assortment of flavors, and I point out my least favorite donut, but I still love them all because they're all donuts, and Poison Chalice is a donut to me. Which is a good thing because I love donuts. So how do you feel about Poison Chalice there?
I agree with you that this was my least favorite episode of the series. It's my least favorite for a few reasons. I don't like Grumpy Tila, but I understand that that's part of who she is right now, and that's part of her character arc, right? But it's still hard to see a character that we love in such a bitter state as she is. But yeah, just like you said, it has some cool ideas with the techno cult of Triclops and Trapjaw and Motherboard. I love all of that. But then the explanations of what's happening to Eternia because of the power sword and the magic leaving, it's a little bit sloppy. It's one
Colt,
of those things where
did you
go
get
ahead.
hung up on that stuff too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if this
it
was
just seemed, it seemed like sloppy exposition.
okay.
When and then I think the main reason why it's my least favorite episode is because the big moment that is supposed to be a hopeful solidifying moment for Tila and ultimately for Adam, this is the first big, moment where it starts hinting at what they mean to each other. And it's okay. It's not as good. They kind of fumble it a little bit, in my opinion. And so it just doesn't ring as powerfully as it could for such an important moment, in my opinion. So, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I can
Me
see
neither.
what they're trying to do. I can appreciate what they're trying to do. It's just a little bit sloppy.
Lucky for me, at least, is it just keeps getting better with each
Yeah.
episode,
Yeah.
And then at some point, I think in part 2 or season 2 to some people, it's just a high crescendo, and suddenly it's like all, at some point they're all on top of a mountain peak to me, and
Yeah.
I'm just loving them all. But this first half, as we're building up, for me, it just progressively gets better and better and better, and more wonderful and more touching and more impactful, and it's great. It's a great series. So
Yeah.
okay, so we both really enjoyed Poison Chalice, but
Sure.
but recognize it does have some issues.
Mm-hmm.
That fortunately don't appear as much as the story continues. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, Colt, do you have anything else to add about the Poison Chalice or anything else we discussed today, sir?
I don't think I do. I think I'm glad we're through talking about episode 2 just because it is my least favorite. And now I'm excited more to talk about the episodes that I enjoy more than this one. But I do want to clarify, I don't hate this episode. I don't think it's a terrible episode, just like we've already stated.
Yeah.
That's how we feel, and that's okay.
Yep. I was happy to see Stinkor. Jeez.
Me too.
Yep. All right. So
I do
that's
want. Sorry. I will
no,
say
no,
one
go
thing that
for it.
what I will say, one thing I really like about this episode is I like how it portrays Cringer as kind of a protector to the sorceress in her weakened state. I think that's a really touching thing that we see throughout the series as it goes on, that Cringer stays by her side.
Yeah. And this is not the first time we see Cringer using his body to stop someone from falling.
No. It's a very nice touch how he positions himself to catch people when they need his help.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Spoiler, he does it with Adam in a really to really great effect. So
a very cool way.
Yeah. So all right. Yeah. I guess that's a wrap. So we want to thank everyone for listening or watching. Mm-hmm. And wherever you enjoy this podcast, YouTube, Amazon, Podbean, Spotify, please hit that subscribe button, guys and gals. Give us a like and leave us a comment. We love the feedback, so please keep it coming. Tell us what we're doing right. You could tell us what we're doing wrong. Just be nice.
Yeah.
And we just enjoy the feedback. We enjoy the response. And if you have any ideas, please share those too, and if they sound good to us, we'd love to implement them. And
definitely.
And Colt, you're yawning, buddy. You're tired.
I'm trying to keep it under wraps.
This episode is making him sleepy, guys. So we better call it
like quits. Somebody slipped a sedative into my drink. They poisoned my chalice.
There we go. It's all connected. It must have been Scarecrow, not Scareglow.
That's right.
So, definitely leave us comments, guys. We love the feedback. And also remember, for all our news and latest content, visit us at foreternia.com, where you can find links to our social media pages like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can contact the podcast via email at foreternia@gmail.com. So from me and Colt, thanks again for listening. And let the power return, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.